You?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. My
Well,
goodness.
we have got a all-star panel. We've got Olympians who are in Spain. We've got people from Canada. We've got people from all over the place. So we've got a very, very cool group of people here who I know are incredibly excited to get to know you a little bit.
I'm
So
very excited to meet you all.
I am going to jump right in. So for those of you who have not been on, this is called Something New Conversations with Legends series, which we only have legends. So today we are super blessed to have a true rock star in Kara Goldin. So let me give you a brief introduction in case anyone, I don't know how this is possible, doesn't know who Kara is. She's the founder and CEO of Hint, which I think we're all enjoying, probably some right now. She was EY's Entrepreneur of the Year. She was Fortune's Most Powerful Women. Huffington Post listed her as one of the 6 disruptors, along with Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. She's the mother of 4, and she is the author of an absolutely incredible new book called Undaunted. And if you could see mine, it's pretty beat up because my wife and I have already devoured this, and it's dog-eared and highlighted. It's unbelievable. So we are incredibly, incredibly blessed to have Kara with us today, especially in this crazy time where she's launching a book, which I'm sure is going to become a bestseller. So I wanted to welcome Kara. So for those of you who have not been on one of these calls before, the kind of the magic behind this is they're invite only, as you guys know, and they're super interactive. So we absolutely want to hear a little bit about Kara's inspiration for writing Undaunted. But I want you guys to have an opportunity to ask your questions directly to Kara. So you don't need to put anything in the chat or text me or whatever. You can just like jump right in and ask Kara a question. But Kara, let's start out. It's not like you were sitting around with nothing to do. Mother of 4, you've built an incredible business in Hint. You have no spare time. Yet you said, I need to get this message out of Undaunted. So give me kind of the inspiration and give everybody a little bit of a sneak preview, because I know I was blessed. I got to read the book already. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, thank you so much. And I really am excited to be here today just to talk to you guys a little bit more about just not only the book, but just sort of my thinking on this. But basically, I was over the last few years out speaking and sort of telling the story of Hint and how I built this company. And, I would run into entrepreneurs. There's always that Q&A at the end where people, raise their hand and say, like, hey, I'm listening to your story, but you're really different than I am because you don't have fears, you don't have doubts, you haven't had failures along the way. And somewhere along the way, I think I just sort of spoke up and said, actually, that's not true at all. I actually have a lot of failures. I have tons of doubts. And frankly, I think most people who are, pretty successful people, whether that's business people or athletes or, just people that you might want to admire, actually do have all of those things as well. And the difference between maybe where I am and where this person was is that I just actually go try. And I don't allow a wall to get up in front of me that is so big that I don't actually go out and, try and accomplish something. And along the way, I may, learn things and that cause me to kind of shift along the way in my business, or Clearly I may fail. And, later on, I look back in the rearview mirror and I think, oh, okay, that was a failure then, but that actually got me to this next point. So part of my reason in, taking the time to really write down these stories is that I fundamentally believe that through stories, people actually learn how to solve their own problems. And so what this book isn't is here's the 1, 2, 3 that you're, going to get, and you're going to, and everything's going to be perfect, right? Instead, what it's going to hopefully show you and inspire you to do is to say, if she can do it, and like she's been through a lot, and look where this company is today, then I can do it too. So that is really, the big inspiration behind it. And the fact that I had so much travel time over the years and I got sick of watching TV, I just decided to start journaling all of these different stories that would come up. And, really as I would be not only speaking, but also I spend about 5 hours a week mentoring people, and I would, it would sort of jog my memory about a story that was, similar to kind of what they were going through when I would tell these stories. So that's it.
Yeah, amazing. So the book is such an incredible read, and it's so much fun to kind of see her journey from being a tech executive with AOL back in the heyday to all of a sudden getting into an industry, the beverage industry, which is crazy competitive, and trying to do something that nobody has done before. Would you mind sharing that Coca-Cola story? So when you met with the executive from Coca-Cola and you were trying to solve a problem, and well, I'll let you jump in and tell that story.
Yeah, so I didn't have experience in the beverage industry, and when I decided to start this company, it was really out of my own interest to get myself healthier. I wasn't diagnosed with anything in particular, but I just didn't feel healthy. I had at that time had 3 kids when I had left AOL, and was trying to just figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And during that time, I thought this new store called Whole Foods had just opened down the street from me in San Francisco, and it was sort of dreamy, and everything was like really, organic, and everything was like super great. So I thought, if I start shopping there and I start working out, then I'll, lose this weight that I had gained through having all these kids. And basically the combination of like eating right and working out wasn't working. And I was, at this point, like counting calories and really, watching what I was eating. And I just couldn't get my arms around like why this wasn't like working. And so one day I turned my, drink around, which was my Diet Coke. And I saw how many ingredients were in that. And I'd sort of given a pass to it because it was called diet. And I thought, like, there's probably nothing wrong with this, but just because I'm doing it in the food world, I should probably like hold the same accountability to, to the drink product as well. So I'm just giving a little bit of background, Scott, because I think it's important to sort of say
absolutely
where it came from. So basically, once I did that, I realized that it was, it was just as bad. And, as some of the food items that were out there, and I had swapped it for plain water. And basically, like, I never liked water. I never sort of owned that I didn't like water, but I aspired to be a water drinker. I knew that it was like better for me, but I started slicing up fruit one day to get myself to drink water, not really knowing like what I was doing other than the fact it would make it taste better. And after 2.5 weeks of just making this one swap, I lost 24 pounds. My skin cleared up. I had developed terrible adult acne, which I didn't even have as a teenager. I was, my energy levels were back. And when you lose that much weight in a few weeks and you haven't seen people for a while, they're like, whoa, like what happened to you? And, you know, I know you've been working out more. And I'm like, no, I like made the shift with this like diet soda. It wasn't even full-fledged soda. So that was kind of like the background on sort of how I decided, you know, that this change was needed. And then I really went searching for this product in stores. Again, hadn't had any experience. And one day when I walked into my favorite store, Whole Foods, I started talking to the guy that was stocking the shelves. And I thought, you know, is this product in here? It's not in here. And so I don't know, just for kicks while I'm looking for my next gig in tech, like it'd be so cool to get a product on the shelf at Whole Foods. So that's a story in and of itself that I talk about in the book. But about a year after, you know, kind of working and getting it on the shelf and realizing that I was kind of in the midst of getting my MBA in beverage. Like I just had no idea what I didn't know, in addition to sort of, you know, like the distribution and recognizing that there were over 2,000 beverages in the beverage industry, which is, you know, crazy competitive. There were all these things like that, like they owned the shelf and a certain amount of real estate on the shelf. And I just was like, God, I don't even know like what I'm doing. This is way harder than I ever thought. And I had built like kind of a little mini brand in San Francisco. And I don't know, we were probably in about 20 stores at this point. So I was talking to a friend about the fact that I was like really proud of what I had built and was hearing from customers, but it was just way too much for me to actually kind of scale it and get it to the next level where it really needed to be. And so she said, you should, you know, talk to this guy that I know is pretty senior at that little soda company in Atlanta and see what he, you know, has to say. Cause maybe he's got some thoughts, or maybe he wants to, you know, take this on for distribution. And so when I got him on the phone, I didn't even know that I was going to say what I said, but basically in explaining sort of where I had been and what I had, you know, built it into, I said, you know, I don't even care, like at this point, about like exactly, you know, what happens, other than the fact that I want it to like be alive. And so if you guys just want to have the brand, you can have it. Like I just want it to be successful. And he interrupted me and said, sweetie, Americans love sweet. This isn't going anywhere. And I was like, wait, did he just call me sweetie? Like I sort of checked out for a minute on the phone, because I'm like, I think he did. Like I don't even know what happened for the next 2 minutes, because I was still kind of zoning in on like what he was saying to me. And once I came back, it was like this light bulb went off in my head, because I realized that while he was a competitor for shelf space and potentially a partner for like distribution, he really thought of this business very, very differently. I mean, my mission and purpose was actually to help other people drink water and get healthy. His mission and purpose was actually to trick consumers into believing that something was better for them. And he was interested in getting down to 0 calories. At the time, it was like 10 calories. They didn't even have it at 0 calories. And he really believed that that was, you know, the key versus actually helping people to get healthy. So a lot of people have asked me, like, why didn't you just like, you know, he called you sweetie. Why didn't you like hang up on him? Why didn't you tell him off? Whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like hearing this guy's like strategy around what he thinks about, you know, this new category that obviously I'm selling, you know, tiny bit of product, and also hearing from consumers, and have seen how it actually affects my own health. So like, I should just hang out on the phone for a while and kind of hear what he has to say. And so, you know, an hour later, I hung up the phone with him, and, you know, it was all super pleasant, but basically like, I was like, I need to go and build this company, because if I don't build this company and build out this category, he's not doing it. And like, we're going to sit here in a world of, you know, products that is just healthy perception versus healthy reality. And that to me was just like, so like, I felt this enormous responsibility for the consumer, because I saw this vision right in front of me that was just like, sad on so many levels. So that was, the Atlanta soda story.
Love it. Love it. So I'm going to open it up to the group because I know we've got a ton of entrepreneurs. We've got a really eclectic group of amazing people, who I think would love to be able to tap into your entrepreneurial journey and kind of all the incredible things you've accomplished. So I'm going to open it up to the group. Who's got a question for Kara?
I'll start.
Mr. Noodleberg.
Hi, Kara.
Hey.
How you doing? So my question revolves around time management. For somebody like you, like I saw you speak at GrowCo 4 or 5 years ago. I met you and your husband. It was a really cool story. How do you manage where you share the story, when you share the story, what's personal, what's business? Because you're so living the business as many entrepreneurs do. I'm kind of curious what your filter is of what you'll do and what you won't do.
Yeah, I really don't have a filter. If you read this book, everyone's heard about my planned C-section and, I don't know. I'm pretty, I don't know. I sort of live what I do every single day, and I love what I do every single day. So, I think that the key thing is, I don't know. I feel I sort of struggle with this enormous responsibility that I think is put on people to separate like personal from professional, because I think it's while that may be the case for people who are living in a house with two very different businesses, right? I mean, in our case, my husband is our chief operating officer, and he's the first person to say that he never thought about getting into this business. He got into this business because I was writing $50,000 checks to buy bottles off of, our personal bank account. So he was like a little concerned, like, where is she going with this? He wanted to know if I was going to Jamaica with girlfriends or something, like, what are you doing exactly? So, I mean, I think more than anything, it's very much a part of our life. And I don't know, like I've been on interviews before where people have asked me things that I guess I've said, yeah, I don't really want to talk about that, but it's very rare. I mean, I think most people say like they kind of feel like they know me. And I think that's another thing that Scott would say about the book. Like I have, friends and even investors who have shared with me, like, I thought I've heard all of your stories. But there's a story in there at Jamie Dimon was he's been a mentor to me from JP Morgan Chase. And, he said that actually, I thought it was fascinating because the stories that people are really saying kind of hit home with them are not really what you would think. And they were all different. So in Jamie's case, it was the Grand Canyon, and it was about like owning your fears. I have a huge fear of heights. I tackle it every single year, and I do something that actually like helps me to get stronger and really start to like undo that fear. But it's a fear that, is real. And so for Jamie, I mean, he was like, I've heard so much about you, but that one in particular was like really helped me to realize that every hard thing that we've been through, whether it's personal or professional, starts to connect. And it's, I mean, for Jamie, he had, been through throat cancer and, and some very personal things that, he said that I think about the same things, and how those, really tough things like are part of your life and part of your journey, and how that makes you a stronger leader. And so anyway, a long-winded answer, but I think it's one that is, kind of, they all do connect.
Can't wait to read the book. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Chris. Chris built a very, very successful food and beverage company and had a nice little exit. So I'm anxious to hear what your question is for Kara.
Thanks, Kara. Thanks for joining us. And at it again. I'm building an aspiring food brand called Zoe.life. We're doing plant-based complete meals based on the Mediterranean diet and family recipes. What I'd really like to hear about is between the time when you were mad sciencing the product at home and when you truly broke through, call it significant distribution, were there any tipping points that you can point to that really helped you get over the hump?
Yeah, and I think there were a lot. I think that the key thing is, and what was your other company, by the way?
Progressive Gourmet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna put my glasses on here, but there were quite a few. I mean, I look back on those days of just being in Whole Foods as, again, I had no experience, so I was kind of learning everything from distribution to, how to get a shelf stable product along the way. I would say that the key thing that I learned is that there's no rule book, right? For us, we ended up getting into some of the corporate accounts, some of the tech corporate accounts. I was actually being recruited for a job at Google when they were first starting out. And a guy, Omid Kordestani, who I knew pretty well, was giving me some really nice offers to come and join Google. And, and after a while, especially because he was a friend, I, just said, don't keep throwing things at me because it's getting really tempting. I really have this other thing that I'm doing. And he misunderstood that to think that I was interviewing with a competitive product. And so I said, hey, can we go grab coffee one day? And I pull out this bottle of Cucumber Hint. And I said, yeah, this is what I'm working on. And he started laughing and he was like, oh my God, I had no idea what you were, talking about. And so he introduced me to the head chef at Google because he said, we're having this issue at Google. And Omid was the first employee at Google behind the founders. And he's like, we, have the chef that is cooking meals for people because it takes too long to go out to lunch and they don't have any drinks. So maybe you could, I don't know, get them water, and made that introduction. Anyway, fast forward, we got in there and these tech accounts were way bigger than any of the grocery store accounts. And so we started building inside of tech firms. And when Cheryl went over to Facebook, she called me and said, hey, I just went to this little company called Facebook. I used to be at Google, and, can we have Hint too? And, and so all of a sudden, it just started building. And again, what I thought was so beautiful was nobody was looking at tech firms as this distribution opportunity. So we were the only one there for 2 years, thing that was going on. And again, I think distribution today, if you're a follower of what everybody else is doing, I think that that's one piece of your distribution. For in the beverage, or that's one way of thinking about things, but you have to figure out other ways where you can actually really stand out, where you can be in an area where nobody is kind of focusing on. And how do you find those areas? I don't know. You have to just keep your ears and eyes open. And I really think that that's true for every single industry. But so often, we think there's this rule book, right? Or this big plan, and this is the way that you have to go. And, if you're in a natural food company, you go to Whole Foods first, well, that's fine. But, if you don't have some other kind of distribution out there, then it ends up, you're vulnerable. Right. And so for me, I think we were always kind of thinking about, well, where else can we go that's just a little bit different that nobody is really focused on? And I think you can take that into so many different industries. But yeah, that was, really the key thing. And then obviously direct to consumer. I mean, that's another story in the book. I mean, that for me was a little bit of an aha moment. I ran AOL's e-commerce and shopping partnerships for 7 years. And so I never really thought that people would actually be buying beverages online because of things like, heavy shipping and, lots of problems with actually getting it out the door. Today, that's 55% of our business is direct to consumer. Wow. And so, I'm constantly telling people that, again, like people are trying to catch up. The big soda guys are hiring 300 people and spending millions of dollars to build this team internally, to do this. And I mean, we had like 2 for like 2 years. Like I built the original, I like literally did e-commerce in a box and came home and started like, sort of coding, but I don't really even know how to code very well, but I just built this thing out just to see whether or not it would work. And now that piece of business is 55% of our overall business. So, so
amazing.
Right. And so I'm always like, I don't know. I think the scrappier that you can always stay too. I know Scott, is very much this way as well with this business. Like, I can scale and I can do strategy, but I can actually go back to just, being scrappy. And, over COVID, I was delivering product in stores and, walking into Target stores and helping my team. I took on a route, and they want me to continue because they're like, we were getting more space when you were out there with us. And so again, I think that there's so many different examples of, just kind of figuring out ways that you can expand the brand that just by doing.
Yeah, amazing. So we have a line of questions around the block, which obviously we're not going to have time to get to all of them. But we do have a question from the amazing Megan Riley, who congratulations, not only on the podcast, but also on opening up the master franchise in China. That's huge. So congrats. So Megan, you're up.
Thank you, Kara. You are just awesome. I'm so excited to get to talk to you. I'm just grateful for the voice and what you've built. I just think you're the greatest. So I have a question for you that I've built a business, but I've not really started networking at all until like really in the past year. I kind of was just like in my own world, like you were talking about, scrappy, like building whatever. And I've kind of all of a sudden been like, oh my gosh, there's there's so much out there and so many people I can learn from. But I also hear a lot about coaching and mentors, and I'm also back to like the entrepreneurial spirit of like, I'll figure it out myself, I'll do it myself. But I also don't want to be a fool in thinking like there's people that are willing to help, coaches. What is your take on mentors? I have huge dreams and I want to keep going, and I've got all this stuff I want to do, but I also sometimes feel like having some focus and some help with that would help. But my entrepreneurial spirit is always like, figure it out, And so I'm just curious your take on coaching or mentorship or something like that, and over the course of your career, kind of what you found helpful.
Yeah, I think at different points along the way, I try and figure out like what I really need, and that is when I would have a coach, right? Like for different, specific like tasks. I've always been a really social person, but what I found, and frankly, I think it's still true today, I have less people who are kind of friends and I would say like business mentors in my own industry. Like I don't know. It's like, it might be my own kind of sort of block, but I actually learn a lot more from other industries and kind of hearing other people's stories. So, I was on the phone the other day talking about sort of a board question with Neil Blumenthal from Warby Parker, like people like that, where I'm just like, wow, that totally helped me think about something. Like, again, he loves drinking hint and stuff. And so it's, all good. But again, is he a coach? No, not really. But he's like an hour where I actually like, I have a very specific question that I want to talk to him about something. And I've just been able to sort of incubate, you know, those kind of relationships. But I just also feel like, you know, especially when you're just starting to grow this, I think that it's, you're doing it right. You're in this group where people have all different kinds of experience. And I think it's just, you come and you show up and you listen and you focus. And, you know, I just always find like not everything will actually, you know, resonate with you, but there's definitely pieces that will. And then follow up with people, like go back to them and say, hey, what you said was like really, really hit home. And, you know, people like that, right? Like people like having that dialogue with you when you know, when you hear that from them. So I think you start to build this automatic, you know, kind of group. I remember I was part of this EY entrepreneur program, and there was a lot of stuff that I learned in that program, but I think like the one thing that came out of that was like, it is so critical for every single leader to actually spend time outside of their business. And like initially you have to, even if it's really hard, you've got to spend, like they suggested initially 20% of your time should be like blocked and as like, I need to spend that outside of my business. So I really think it's important, if nothing else, just to get you thinking about how to actually take it to the next level.
Yeah, so helpful. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's so many people lined up. I don't know who was next. So whoever was next, jump right in and ask Kara your question.
Well, I don't know who's next, but Kara, it's a pleasure to be on the phone with you. And I did a lot of research about you prior to the call, just so I could be, you know, informed and listen closely to the stories and hear the nuances. I hear a lot of women asking successful women, how do they handle, you know, the relationship, the work-life balance. And while I am not so interested in that, I am interested in hearing a lot about how do you experience power and the power that you have being at the top of your game, influencing at the top of organizations. What has it been like to assume and take on power in your role? I mean, I understand also you've spoken about the huge responsibility you have the consumer and to health and to not being a gimmick, but being a true product. So if you would just talk a little bit about power.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I feel the first thing that comes to mind is I'm working on a huge initiative in Washington right now around clean water. And it really came out of me learning a lot about water in the last 15 years. And I knew nothing about water. And, you know, I'm a sponge on the stuff. And the net of it is we have 8 plants throughout the US, and, you know, sort of the initial quality of water varies greatly. And so by state, and we actually put our water through like crazy processes and filtration and, you know, and pasteurization and lots of stuff in order to remove a lot of stuff. And over time, the water quality has gotten worse, and different things like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with PFAS. There was a huge movie called Dark Waters, which was out last holiday, that talked about this, but it's a known carcinogen that's in our water supply that, according to the NIH and the Center for Disease Control, is like a huge problem. So I just started calling my senators and my representatives and like started getting meetings when I was in DC. And I said, hey, I'm like a small business owner in San Francisco, and I'd really like to come and talk to you guys about some of these things that I'm seeing. So we are now putting a bill before Congress right now to get the EPA to federally regulate like a lot of stuff right now, including PFAS, including lead. And it's really hard and it's really complicated. But I think that I feel like I've been gifted this knowledge, and it is my responsibility as a business owner. And I guess if you call that power, to actually go and be the voice of consumers where they have no idea and they don't see the stuff that I see. So I think it just goes back to me, really listening to and wanting to help consumers around health. I mean, I remember when Congresswoman Jackie Speer, who I'm working very closely with on this initiative, said to me, like, are you a lobbyist? How are you, like, how do you know, like, how to do this stuff? And Kamala Harris and a few other people. And I was like, I don't, like, at all. Like, I mean, this is for me, I feel like if I don't do this, no one else will. And by the way, the soda companies haven't shown up yet. We've invited them to show up, but they're not showing up yet. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm still going to go before Congress if we can get this bill before Congress and talk about how, like, horrible this is that consumers don't know about this stuff. So I think I don't think power sits, I guess the net of it is, I don't think power just sits within an organization. I think when you're allowed to have the sort of the experience that I've had and also the responsibility that I've had, you figure out other ways that you can actually try and fix things that maybe a nonprofit, even though they mean well, hasn't been able to do. Right? That for whatever reason, they're listening to me in Washington, and I'm like, look, I'm just showing you the data. I have like, you guys do with it whatever you want. But at the end of the day, this is what we're doing and we're going for. So anyway, I don't know. I feel like it's a responsibility that doesn't stop. And I don't think it just stops, within an organization, I guess, is the net of it. And I think there's a lot of other leaders. Greg Renfrew from Beauty Counter has done a ton around, ingredients and cosmetics ingredients. Why weren't the L'Oreal's and some of the other companies doing it? Like, I feel like there's other leaders beyond me that are taking that power as responsibility to do more where they can and where they see.
Yep.
Love it.
Thank you.
All right.
Voice.
Who is next?
Hey, Kara, this is Sean. I loved your story on Coca-Cola. It reminded me of the leadership at Blockbuster telling Netflix founders that they had a dumb idea that wouldn't go anywhere. Also, really found your non-traditional distribution network through the tech companies really interesting, and it made me wonder, how do you get by what would seem like insurmountable barriers to entry in an industry as tough and dominated by giants as the beverage industry? Did you go around, through, over, or were they just not really barriers?
Yeah, so we, I mean, no one wanted to talk to us initially. I mean, everybody was like, oh, you're too small, you're too, why would we want to, distribute your product? Like, you guys aren't sweet enough. You're like, there were a million reasons why they didn't. So literally, like, we started like man with a van, like we said, and initially I was the man with the van, right? Where I was like throwing my stuff into my Grand Cherokee and really starting to do this stuff. But then when we started to pick up steam, then it started to grow, right? And then suddenly people are like, oh, what are you guys doing over here? So, it's fascinating. I talked to the founder of Honest Tea a few years ago, and they could not figure out how to actually grow their company beyond 10 million without doing a relationship with either Coke or Pepsi. And, we're north of a couple 100 million now. And, we don't have a relationship, you know, with any of the big guys. So I think we've been able, you know, to do it and grow it in the way that, you know, we want to do it. I think so often, like, people are really looking for, like, you know, they're looking for a reason why they can't, right? And I think, like, that's the thing that, like, I've always enjoyed puzzles, right? Like, for me, like, it's just like, I love the puzzles that just never end. Like, I love Scrabble. I used to play Scrabble a lot, where I'm just constantly, like, rowing, you know, on and on and on, where I think, like, that is the thing that real entrepreneurs are doing. Like, they're okay with, you know, running into barriers and trying to figure out how to, like you said, go over them, go around them. And yeah, I think we did a little bit of everything, but also the distribution of, you know, direct to consumer too. I think, like, that is a piece where we finally own that relationship with the consumer. And, you know, when COVID hit, that was so major. I mean, that's a story in and of itself, but, you know, an interesting one in that all of that tech business for us, like, went away, right? When everybody shut down their offices. It was like, and I'll never forget, you know, March 13th, like, closing my New York office. And I was in New York and, you know, really trying to figure out, are we going to close down San Francisco next week? I flew back to San Francisco and popped into a couple of Target stores late night on my way home from the airport, and no stock on the shelves. I'm thinking, I am screwed right now. Like, this is really bad. You know, my stores don't have product. These tech firms are all going to be shut down. Like, I don't know what to do. And so in addition to, like, phoning all of our buyers that weekend and saying, can we just send trucks in directly? We'll bypass our distributors right now. We'll figure it out with them later and get you guys, like, product on the shelf. Like, that literally happened in 48 hours. But in addition, I sent out an email to our over 1 million consumers on our direct to consumer business. And I said, it's scary out there. Like, I'm scared. I'm really scared. I'm a parent of 4. My daughter had just come back from school in Dublin, and, you know, worried that Europe was going to, or the US was going to get shut down. And, you know, I'm walking into stores and, you know, I don't know what's going on in the world, but I also know that I have a lot of product in my warehouse right now. Please don't hoard in stores. If you guys want to go online and buy our product, and, like, we have tons of it. And we got like a 60% response rate off of that email, because it was like this real person was actually saying, like, I'm not going to tell you, like, it's all going to be okay. I don't know if it's going to be okay. I'm looking at my business right now, and I'm not only scared for my business, I'm scared for my family. I'm trying to figure out a lot of different things, but we're here. And that email was, like, incredibly powerful, but also one that, you know, just thank God I had that relationship with the consumer that I had, because everybody else who didn't have that direct to consumer business was sitting here thinking, like, how do I, like, fix these things? And we were in such great shape by March 16th to be able to, you know, manage so much of this, that it was just crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think you guys are getting an idea of why I love Kara so much.
Absolutely.
So who is next?
Jump in? Can I jump in?
Absolutely, Scott? Linda.
So, Kara, this is just an amazing conversation, and thank you, Scott. Kara, yeah. I love this, the caffeine kick. This is just brilliant, because a lot of people like a cup of coffee, right, in the afternoon, and instead to have this, it just works out terrific. And there's one other piece of feedback I'd love to give you, and that's, you know, there's a lot of mission-based companies out there, but I just watched your video on your breast cancer awareness package online. And thankfully, I've not been touched by it, but very close. My sister-in-law and my niece, who both got the worst kind. My sister-in-law died at 30. When Kara, my niece Kara, was 7 years old, she just got the same type 2 or 3 years ago, and she's doing fine, which is amazing. But I wanted to tell you that your video really comes across so personal. So like, not just like, you know, when you buy a product, another product is given to another person or another institution or whatever. The way you use cancer survivors in the message and the way you come across with the work you're doing is very unique and very authentic. And I wanted to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So those are actually friends of mine.
Really?
Yeah, that all have been faced with breast cancer. And so it was, yeah. And I mean, that was put together very, very quickly as well. And you know, like I said, we donated, we're the 5th largest corporate donor to the Komen Foundation. And Paula, who's actually in there in the video with the blonde hair, she actually runs the Komen Foundation. And I think I'm actually going to be interviewing her on Facebook and LinkedIn Live in a couple of weeks. So you should definitely join. I mean, she's a cancer survivor, and she just took over the Komen Foundation about a year ago and doing a lot of rebuilding of that. So anyway, we're looking to hopefully even go over that amount this year, but it's been great and sort of getting to know them a little bit better. But thank you. That's really awesome. Nice.
Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. I think we have probably time for a few more questions.
I'll throw one out there. First of all, the PFOA, PFAS stuff's kind of near and dear because I live in an area that's been pretty affected by that. Southern Vermont, I think, kind of started a big chunk of the ball rolling, and the state has actually stepped in with quite a few regulations around it. So commendable that you're putting a focus on that. So I actually am kind of asking a question on behalf of not my role in tech, but on behalf of a family business. Scott, I think, knows my 71-year-old dad still gets up and goes to work, has no intention of retiring. He runs a cheese company. And they've been around for quite a while and have pretty wide distribution. And I'm just curious, you know, they've kind of grown old school. What was the biggest process thing that you've implemented, or just structure or cadence of the business, kind of the behind the scenes, maybe not so sexy stuff that you really believe was a key enabler of your rapid and explosive growth?
So before, so this was actually my husband, who is our chief operating officer, has been so focused. It's almost been like the at times the joke of our executive team, because he's been so focused on automating the production of hint as much as possible. So for the last 4 years, he has been trying to get the room where this ultimately is filled and happens with no people in it, because we don't use preservatives. And he felt like from a safety standpoint, it was critical, because where do germs come from? People, ultimately. And that's how, you know, that's how people get sick. So December 2019, we learned that we're going into Aldi and Walmart and Sam's Club. And we knew 2020 was going to be a crazy year. By January, he's like, look, we're going to have these crazy volumes. If anybody gets sick, you know, on these lines, like the closer we can get. We had like one person in the room at that time, basically wiped out having anybody in the room. He had figured out how to automate it as much as possible. When COVID rolled in March, we had no people in the room. In addition to, so bottled water plants are actually state regulated currently, but we are actually FDA regulated because we use fruit in our products. So we're considered a food company. So in March, when they were trying to figure out where is COVID coming from, the FDA started walking into plants trying to figure out if it was coming in through the food supply. And so they walked into our plant and they walked out of our plant because they saw that we were automated. And so we had zero production issues and we were ready to scale because we had gotten to the point of actually, being so automated. So I look at so much of this food manufacturing and exactly what happened. And, frankly, if it's not COVID, I think it's going to be something else. I think the more that we can start to automate, that doesn't mean that we do away with all people. It means that where it's not necessary, how can you as a company start to get this stuff automated? And because that will allow you to, really be able to not only scale. And by the way, when April rolled around and, companies were, a lot of people's companies, like most of the can manufacturing, for example, is done in Asia. So because this virus had different timing, basically plants were shut down in China. So there was a delay and a lot of people couldn't actually manufacture. So a lot of the soda companies, for example, couldn't manufacture a lot of their drinks. And so we got a phone call at the beginning of April from Costco asking us to go nationwide with Costco, because not only did they hear that we were totally automated, but also that we were doing everything in the US. So I think the combination of automation and as local as possible, it was like, bingo. Did we actually have that in our strategy plan? No, for us, it was like really a carbon footprint issue. And it was just easier. I didn't have to go, to another country in order to make sure that things were getting set up properly. But I think that those things definitely are super key for, any industry now, whether you're a food manufacturer or any other type of manufacturer, to do things as locally as possible with less people, I think is just totally key.
Thank you. Super insightful. I appreciate it.
All right. We are going to squeeze one more quick question in, and then we're going to let the extraordinarily busy Kara go on with her day.
I could stay here all day. So fun.
Oh my God. We'll definitely, we'll keep you as long as we can.
I have a quick question which might help you with your book, because I looked up your book as you were talking and I wanted to buy the audio. When's the audio coming out?
October 20th. So yeah, so it's all in pre-sale right now, but I think the Audible I think they just don't unlock it until October 20th. So very, very soon. So excited to get it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I have a background in ecology, so for you to do what you're doing as a company that can make some legislation change, thank you so much. I mean, I basically left that whole field because it was so frustrating, so yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, I think gone are the days where, there's a separation. I used to think that nonprofit, like you were either nonprofit or you were for profit. And that's like my side hustle over there is, when I get to it's a whole other story. I talk about it a little bit in the book that, I worked for John McCain in Arizona when I was in high school, and I loved John. And John and I agreed to disagree about a lot of things. He thought I was this precocious, high school kid who always told him he was wrong. But he let me stay. I told him when I was in college, he said, "So did I convince you to be a Republican yet?" And I said, I still don't know if I'm a Republican or not. So every time I saw him, he was like, "Come on." And then when he knew I was working for Obama on an initiative for entrepreneurism, he was like, "I don't know what's going on. Did I do something wrong?" And I'm like, "No, you're still a good guy. I disagree. Remember, we agree to disagree about certain things." But, that I think about those stories a lot where, that kind of gave me, I guess, the confidence to sort of know that these are just humans and you've got to often just bring them back to reality to actually go and get stuff done sometimes. And anyway, really, I'm excited about this initiative, and hopefully we'll get it before Congress soon.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So Kara, Ann is the founder of the Look for the Good project. So Kara and I first got together when she wrote an amazing chapter about her parents in Standing O Encore. And Ann Kibitsky is the founder of the Look for the Good project, which is really the organization that this book really tries to raise awareness and funding for. So Kara, once again, thank you for always supporting everybody. You're amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Totally.
Thank you.
Will you guys check in with me too on social for sure?
Absolutely. So Kara, thank you. You're always giving back, whether it's mentoring or whether it's what you're doing with breast cancer. I know we all have tremendous admiration for you. Definitely, guys, go out, pick up Undaunted. Obviously, it's a no-brainer to pick up Hint. And I really, really appreciate you spending time with us. I cannot thank you enough.
No, this was awesome. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a good rest of the week. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, team. Something New team.
LGO.
Hi, Allie.
I lost
Hey,
it.
Stacy, how are you?
I'm well. I have my t-shirt. I'm waiting to take a picture of it in Maine. I'm going to Maine.
You haven't gotten your t-shirt?
Yeah, but
Oh,
I
you
haven't.
did? Awesome. Okay, super.
Go to
Super.
Maine.
Because I have Mr. McGregor right over here. So I.
Yeah, so as long as you got it. Perfect.
You got it. Awesome.
Very good.
So happy.
Hi, Meg.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you guys so much.
Hi,
Meg, who's next? Who's next on the podcast?
I think Kyler Murray's mom,
Nice.
Missy Murray. Yeah, football season seems like the right time, and I'm getting all breast cancer survivors this month as well, which is fun. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Let's talk about how Kara just casually drops in the like Obama and McCain buddies at the end.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, I was on the phone with Cheryl.
And then she's like, oh, and then that.
I'll tell you a story. So I'm on the phone with her a couple weeks ago, and we're just shooting the breeze and talking about different ways to promote the book. And just casually mentions that she's friends with Michelle Obama, and Michelle called her and apologized that, you know, she couldn't write an endorsement of the book because she had promised that she wouldn't do anything like that during campaign season. But it was like she was talking about her next door neighbor. And I'm like, that's crazy. That's like, we're in Oprah level here.
Yeah, that's a totally different.
Yeah, for sure.
She knows a couple people.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful, wonderful person.
Yes.
I didn't get to say this, but this is kind of an interesting story. So a lot of you guys know Pierre DuPont is a really good friend of mine, and he's typically on these calls, and he typically engages and asks questions. So in the book, and I'm a little bit of a spoiler alert. In the book, the original name for Hint was Wawa, because that's how her kids said water. So they were going to name Hint Wawa, but they got spooked. So Kara's husband, Theo, is a lawyer, and they got spooked because there's a very, very large convenience chain named Wawa.
Oh,
so she talks about being afraid to be sued. So the owner of Wawa is Pierre DuPont. So unfortunately, he wasn't on the call, but he and I were chatting yesterday about it, and he was laughing. He said, "Yeah, I would have sued her." So, it's a small world when you're reading a book. I was reading it, and I said to my wife, I said, "Meg, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. Like, she's actually talking about Pierre. She's obviously not using his name. I don't even think she knew that he owns Wawa, the Wawa chain, but yeah, it's crazy."
That's funny.
That's crazy. That's crazy that he owns Wawa. I'm very familiar with Wawa. That's unbelievable.
I love Wawa.
Yeah.
You can't handle Wawa.
Who doesn't love Wawa?
That's definitely how you know you're in the right circles. Like when you're in the right circles, that Kara Goldin's writing a book
and she's talking about Wawa, and you know the owner of Wawa, like that's how you know you're in the right circle. I'm just putting it out there.
You're like, okay, something's working here. Something's working here. You guys asked phenomenal questions. Stacy, I love that question about power, because it is fascinating. I mean, she's really risen to a level that I would say like Sarah Blakely from Spanx, and she's like kind of like in that top echelon of female CEOs. I mean, she's a rock star, and she's got so much, you know, ability to make change, and you just see what she does to give back. I mean, she's huge with mentoring, and she's, you know, so philanthropic. She's just a really, really special person. And you guys will love the book. Love it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And you've got to also pick up, Megan, you want to give a plug for Sarah's book?
Oh, yes, I do. I'm so proud of her. She, right next to, it's awesome. So my sister Sarah is the founder and CEO of our company Tippy Toes, and when Kara was talking about how you know, because we just talk about writing a book, sometimes, you know, I've thought about it too, and I think, you know, but you know, it's the same, like I'm not going to say be lazy and don't take action, like there's, you know, am I going to say anything new? Like, no. But her point of like stories, you know, illustrated in different ways. And I thought Sarah in her book, she did such a good job of telling the stories that illustrate so many of the points that we know, but hearing the stories behind it are, you know, just makes it a little bit, it just makes it resonate and special. So Destined for Greatness, available on Amazon right now.
And the book is doing great, right?
It is. Yeah. It's great. She's, you know, and it's such a labor of love. I mean, we all know, like when we work hard for something, like this was a specific thing and she's worked so hard for it. And so to now see it being received so well is just, you know, that's all you want, is it? And really she just wants it to serve people.
Right.
You know, and have it bring them light. And she talks a lot about her faith and that's
a great book. It's a great book. What's your favorite story in it, Megan? Because I've read it and the stories are just awesome.
You know what's so funny is I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like when, you know, I love when she talks about our Graham, because she's kind of larger than life. I couldn't get through that chapter actually. And then when she talked about my dad and the certain, like, you know, and it's all the personal stuff for me that was like anything talking about the conversation she had. I can remember my dad yelling at her tennis matches, and I remember that so clearly. So those, you know, those people that what is, you know, kind of sticks with me. So
one of my favorite stories was the one about the car. I mean, I could just picture it. The way she loaded everything in her car and was ready to pull away, and your dad came out, no, open the door.
Take everything in your car. Yeah, it's not your car, honey. Yeah, unload it. yeah.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye, Stacy.
Yeah,
Bye, Stace.
I love the fact that she started the book like in the very beginning. She said, anyone who knows me knows that I love Jesus and I love football. And I'm like, I'm in love with you already. Like, you're phenomenal.
Keep reading.
Exactly. Like I was totally hooked from then forward. So it's a phenomenal book.
Yeah. And that is very true to her. So anyway, so yeah, it's all good, all exciting. So but Kara was such a great addition, Scott. Like it's like one month after another. It's just like, oh, it's so good. I love these so much. Well, I'm so grateful.
What do you think? So we'll keep going?
Absolutely.
All right. So we've just wait. We have got some unbelievable people lined up. So I'm excited. So no shortage of interesting people, I think, for you guys to talk to. But the cool thing is, like, you guys are all, like, every one of you could be the person, which is so kind of weird because, you know, you've got this unbelievable group of rock stars listening to another rock star, but anybody. That's why I knew when Kara was having trouble getting on, I'm like, I could just like throw this over to anybody. I'll be like, all right, Robert, go. You're the guy. Conversations with Robert Anderson or conversations with Maya Gordon or whatever. So yeah, it's awesome. You guys are the best.
I appreciate it.
All right, thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank
Over and
you.
out. I will talk to you
Bye,
everybody
everybody.
soon. Take
Cheers.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
everybody.
Scott.